is quite interesting. How did you come across that name, the title?
Well, the title is Multiplication is for White People. If you notice, it's in quotation marks because a young girl said to her tutor, so, black kid, so why are you trying to teach me this, Miss L? Why are you trying to teach me multiplication? Black people just add and subtract. Um, they don't multiply. White people multiply. And it was a starting point to begin to say that our children have internalized a lot of the beliefs of the larger society, and we have to think about that before we can teach them anything.
How do you feel about how the book has been received in academic circles?
Well, I never know what's going to, when you put something out, and it's hard to tell because how do you know? I have found out it is, I think, the seventh top selling education book, so I guess it's doing pretty well. I get emails occasionally from some colleagues that I know talking about the book, and that's rewarding. But I think we just have to wait and see. The prior book was adopted eventually by a lot of colleges of education to work with their students, so I don't know how this one will be.
Why did you write the book?
I wrote the book because it was really important to make sure that our children, that we understood what the issues were affecting our children. That it's not an issue of reform, just the reforms that are going on out there. We have to go beyond what's in the traditional, what has been in the reforms, which are focused solely on instruction. We have a lot of other issues with our children, and we need to make sure that we understand how to best teach them, given the societal place that they are put in, that they're stereotyped and marginalized, but also how the teachers need to understand how to connect to the children's communities and to their heritage and culture in order to be able to teach them. And none of that is in current reforms.
Okay. What do you hope the readers will get out of this book?
Well, I suppose just that. I want people to understand that we have a special task when we're working with kids who have been marginalized by the larger society. We have a special task for African American children to ensure that they excel. And we have to know more than what might ordinarily be taught in teacher education classes. And my experience was that students were not getting that information, even students at historically black institutions. Um, and they're hungry for it. They really want to know, especially our young black teachers or older black teachers, they really want to know the information about their own heritage as well as what we can do to assist our kids other than punish them.
Is this a different kind of student that they're dealing with than, let's say, 15, 20 years ago?
Well, everything is different than it was 15 or 20 years ago. 15 or 20 years ago, you didn't have smartphones, you didn't have kids using computers. And so now we have to adjust in that regard for sure. We have to make sure that we engage kids at a different level. In some ways, they're the same kids. Um, the other thing that has happened, of course, is we have much younger parents because we have many parents who themselves did poorly in school, who feel disconnected from school, and never learned the procedures and processes of how to best help kids at home. And so the answer to that is not just ridiculing their parents, but what can we do in schools to enable us to make up for some of the things that parents aren't able to provide. One of the things that, if you look at slavery, for example, folks said we can't teach because the parents aren't doing X, Y, and Z. Many people during enslavement learned how to read and how to write, even though it was punishable by law. They could lose their hands, they could lose their tongues sometimes. And yet, and their parents didn't know how to do it either. So I think we need to make sure we understand how important it is, how important teachers are for our children. Some people talk about our kids are school dependent, poor kids are school dependent. Middle class kids will learn a lot of information just by being in a middle class home. Many low income children, particularly low income children of color, they won't learn it unless the school teaches. And we have to take that responsibility and embrace it and ensure that there are the things that we want kids to learn, we provide sometimes during school, sometimes after school, but we have to take on the task.
Was there anything that surprised you when you were gathering information for this book?
I think one of the things that was both a surprise and a delight was looking at the research about African American babies and African babies. A study was done in the 50s by Marcelle Gibet, and she wanted to go into Africa to find out what the effects of malnutrition were on infant development. To her shock, she found in African infants the most advanced children she had seen anywhere in the world. They were much more advanced than European children of the same age. And there has been research since then that supports it, almost to the fact that if African American children are performing at the norm, which has been normed on white children, they may be developmentally delayed. But none of us know this information. So that said to me that we are really working with exceptional minds, and we need to understand the exceptionalities that we are the brilliance of those that we are responsible for. Interestingly, the African American advancement, or their ability to do better than white kids of the same age, diminishes as they start school, and then it reverses. So that says that there's something about schools, perhaps, and poverty, the two things together, that aren't supporting the brilliance that the children are born with. And I believe that's what we need to keep in mind, that, as our grandmothers used to say, God didn't make no junk, and our kids, they need us, and they can perform if we focus.
Are there any more books coming up?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. It's difficult for me. I don't like writing. I apparently do it well, but I don't like it because, well, I'm from South Baton Rouge. I was in that first group that got integrated the Catholic schools and graduated from St. Joseph's Academy. Then I went to Antioch in Ohio, which was I didn't exactly know where I was going. As a matter of fact, my mother questioned when she didn't come to the school until I graduated, and then she looked at my sister and said, "Oh, what have we done?" Because it was a very, what can we say? There were a lot of hippies there. So I got a framework about changing the world. That was the basis of my learning at Antioch. I then, after coming back, teaching in Philadelphia, I came back to Baton Rouge for a bit and worked at the State Department, and then decided to go get a master's at Harvard, and was asked to stay for the doctoral program, so I got a doctorate there. My first teaching job, my university job, was actually in Alaska. My dissertation research was in Papua New Guinea, and so I've always been interested in culture and language and education, and then went to Alaska and then a few other places in this country, in the lower 48, I should say.
And how did you come to Southern University?
The then chancellor, or becoming chancellor, Kofi Lomote, asked me if I would come. He was attempting to bring together scholars from around the country, black scholars, who other institutions really wanted to get, to see if he could get a group here at Southern, because a lot of our best scholars, or I won't say best, but certainly our most well-known scholars, are at white institutions. So he didn't know I was from Baton Rouge. And so I agreed to come, in part because my mom is 97, and I wanted to be here, but also because family members had said, why do you have to be everywhere else helping little black kids? We have a lot here that you can focus on as well. So I decided, with all of those issues, to come to Southern.
Thank you for coming to Southern.
Wow. Thank you for having me.